Welcome to another session of Beer and Bytes, hosted by Chris Jordan and Jeremy Murtishaw. And today's episode, we've got the PTP Cloud team with us, Dave Hovenar and DeFredrick and Jespe. And if I've said any of those wrong, guys, please correct me. But I would say at this point in time, let's go ahead and show our beers and whatever else we've brought to drink, and let's get busy with it. So with
all right,
that,
Al, what are you drinking today?
I've got a Voodoo Ranger from New Belgium. It's the IPA from India.
It's juicy, right?
Yep, and I then went and purchased 5 other cans IPAs from Texas. So the next episodes will have Texas-based IPAs.
And it won't be Tito's. All right.
Well, I've got the Golden Roads Lazy LA Haze IPA. This is an amazing beer, local brew here in LA.
La IPA?
Huh?
It's not La IPA?
Lagunitas? No.
All right, I got my
What
3
you got,
knots.
Chris?
I went back with my 3 knots. We're going back to those Charlotte, Richmond kind of beers. So,
Chris, I know you have the tall beer there.
Yeah, you know what? I like the pints. They make these shows go a lot easier.
Yeah.
And, it's an 8%er, which also makes the show go a little bit easier too. Though I gotta cook after this,
And the questions will get a whole lot easier by the end of the show too.
yeah, they're pretty easy in the beginning too. All right, so why don't you guys kick in? You want to start with Steve? How do you want to start? Steve, why don't you begin?
I'll
Because
start.
you're the odd man out.
It's Hovenar, not Hovenar. That's the first thing I was supposed to correct now. So I'm drinking gin, but it did come from a brewery, Big Woods Brewery. It's a Hard Truth distillery. So they make beer and gin, but I'm off beer as we talked about the weight loss program I'm on at this point. So that's the best I can do. It's alcohol. It is a double because it is, we're being recorded, and that's the only way I can do this.
Awesome. All right, Micah.
All right, I'm going with Rheingeist Hustle. It's a local Cincinnati brewery. This is an IPA. This is the beer they always come out with when it should be Reds, baseball opening day. Kind of missed that. I'm still drinking the beer.
Painful.
Jespe, and I've got the Founders All Day IPA because with this quarantine that we're all suffering through, I too am worried about my weight, and I try to keep it a little bit lighter.
Damn.
So Steve,
All right, so
have Steve take us just a little bit through what it is that PTP does for the business world.
I'm going to talk about what I do. Aaron can probably fill in what he does because it's a difference between professional services and managed services. What I look at what we do as primarily 2 roles, and that's simplifying it down. And that is, we are either an extension of someone's security team, or we are the security team. So when I say that, we're going to do SOC services, 24/7, eyes on glass with security monitoring. We're going to do vulnerability management. We're going to do multi-factor. We're going to do DNS security, centralized endpoint protection management. And we've done compliancy help, so kind of virtual CISO role as well. And like I said, a lot of times we are typically the extension. What happens with a lot of companies, if anyone's been in any kind of big company or small company in the security team, you have all these things you need to do, and you have all the time to just do about that much of the things you need to do. So we like to look at ourselves as the people that come in and do the bulk of the things that you would like to get done. Or maybe you startup companies coming in, and that company doesn't have a security engagement team at all. We talk a little bit about AWS and AWS things and people rolling out to the cloud. A lot of those companies are filled with developers. And unlike Micah and Chris on the call that are security-minded development guys, a lot of those guys aren't security-minded development types. So we come in a lot of times and help those companies get going. I'll turn it over to Aaron, who's more of the professional services role. So that being said, we're professional. I'm managed services. That's going to be ongoing engagements that are long-term contracts.
So how are you getting this, Aaron?
Great, thanks. So I'm leading up the professional services practice, engaging predominantly with life sciences organizations. PTP is an AWS Advanced partner. Late last year, we achieved our life sciences certification, which is a really great achievement, especially for an organization of our size, being that 50-ish head count. Predominantly engineers, thankfully, but we've got about 50 heads. And to achieve that life sciences certification really helps set us apart. We're predominantly based in the Boston area, which is where a lot of our sales team is based out of. And Boston is just booming with the therapeutics industry at this point.
Right.
It made a lot of sense for us to align with that. So we also have, not only do we have engineers on our professional services team, but we also have engineers that were scientists at one point in time. So we have another gentleman by the name of Bill Amsbaugh who helps represent more on the hard science side of it. So we like to engage with, I'll speak specifically to the therapeutics company side first. Really from a soup to nuts side, that biotech startup that is going out there and saying, hey, I need everything. I just left my university lab. I've got funding and I need a soup to nuts full pipeline. And that's what we're really helping build on the Amazon platform. So that's what we've been doing a lot of recently, but we have a customer base that is that really spans the whole spectrum of really every industry. We work in manufacturing, hospitality, really the full gamut of things that you see there. That's how we ended up getting our advanced tier partnership, and then grew into life sciences when we saw such a rich opportunity in the Boston area.
All right, Micah, do you want to bring us home with the last of the pieces of this puzzle?
Sure, why not? I do nothing. No. I report to Steve, so I work a lot on the managed service side. But I also deal with some of the professional services on the cloud side. So my background is much more DevOps, security automation, full stack engineering, all that kind of stuff. So the day-to-day with our managed services, I help build a lot of the automation, build integration with our other tools, build integrations with our customers, kind of custom build some of those solutions that we need to automate those day-to-day tasks. And then with Aaron, I work with new customers we have, building out, some new solutions as they come in, and actually taking and building some of those kind of DevOps opportunities as we build out some of that automation for new customers.
If I can jump back in for 1 second.
No problem.
Just to toot the PTP horn a little bit louder, if you don't mind. So we also really like to take on just different ways of engaging with the user community, really, helping support the user groups in Cincinnati. The AWS user groups in Cincinnati, here in the Boston area. Additionally, we like to find new products and really help get in early on those things. And I'm not sure if the team here has been seeing AWS Deep Racer, the AI ML driven racing cars. We were the first partner globally to hold an event where it was open to the public. Traditionally, Amazon sponsors those with a large consulting provider. They bring in just a closed set of people. We're the first consulting partner globally to offer that. And Jeff Barr just retweeted us. We're doing a virtual Deep Racer event next week.
Wow.
This video is out there. Please check that out. I'm pretty proud to say that PTP is getting noticed all the way up the chain to folks like Jeff Barr.
Yeah, let's make sure we put a link on the YouTube channel for it. Yeah, I think the Deep Racer is pretty interesting. I know you guys were involved with that. So let's start, Aaron, because PTP is what it is today wasn't what it was 3 years ago, right? All right. So when a PTP came out, it was what, Pinnacle Technology Partners?
Pinnacle Technology Partners, yeah. And it was maybe 20 of us, and it's been started by gentlemen Ethan Simmons, Mike McElhenney, and Eric Ranson were their original founding partners, and it really just had a cloud first or cloud formation practice starting to build up. We ended up bringing another partner on, a gentleman by the name of Chris Duzio, who ran a company that had a similar Pinnacle name in it. So obviously these guys kind of naming bias thing going on there. But we brought in this other support group as we have 2 years to 3 years to 2 years, brought in this Cisco practice as well, where we really were trying to focus on the SD-WAN aspect of it, focusing on how can we help enable customers get to the cloud fast.
Right.
That wasn't enough. So we just kept on going and said, let's bring in the server practice. Let's build out the professional services. Let's bring out the managed services.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the most interesting part about PTP is how you wound up where you are today. I mean, everybody had a plan, and like most plans, it didn't last very long, right?
Yeah, so
Uh,
we thought we were going to, be sailing away on our brand new yachts because of the AWS resale program, and we found out that wow, there's a reason that everybody's AWS bills are messed up because managing your AWS costs are really hard, and it's hard to make money on something that's hard to control. So, we've gotten better at that over the years and helped a lot of customers get, really tuned in, honed in on their budgets. But we thought day one, we're just gonna click a button and load CloudCheckr and everybody's gonna be fine. But,
okay, and that's another link we should put on is CloudCheckr. So I think CloudCheckr is pretty interesting. I think that really was where I wanted to begin with this whole thing. So most people always, I don't know if you've ever seen that terrible bumper sticker or sticker overall, like the cloud is just somebody else's computer, right? And let's just be honest, the cloud has nothing to do with somebody else's computer. I mean, you have the AWS and the platforms, whether it's Google or AWS or Azure, there's the entire platform. And if all you're doing is auditing the elements, you're not actually seeing your platform, right? So, Micah, since you have to deal with all these pieces and all these components, if you were to go to a layman and say, you're going to take your service and move it to the cloud, can you explain to me why the cloud isn't somebody else's computer?
Well, I mean, I guess in a way it is someone's really, really complicated computer, but it just isn't. It doesn't work the way that people would think of their normal infrastructure. Like, you're not going to go and take this application and you just stick it in the cloud on the server, and it just exists like it does in your on-premise environment. You could start that way, but you're not really embracing what makes the cloud.
You're going to have a nasty bill. If you're just going to post it onto a virtual system and run it 7x24 on a high-end system,
it's just going to get ugly.
Yeah.
And you don't get to take advantage of all the things that a cloud system can do that a normal system can't. You have all your like serverless environments that let you spin things up and down, like on demand, on demand resources, on demand, processing.
Different storage types, right? You got your
storage types,
your EBSs,
storage tiers.
All those different things, how you store data, like you can store them in long-term storage, you can put them in short-term storage. I also think there's a definite element with cost. People used to, in a normal environment, you just stand up and you go, well, I buy this one server, it's $10,000 or whatever, and then you just use it until you run out of space and you have to buy something else.
Yeah.
Or you never utilize it at all. So a big part of the cloud is getting much better at only paying for what you're going to use at a time. And then that's ignoring all the wonderful security concerns that exist in the fact that you've just stuck your entire application in the middle of a public environment.
Well, I imagine that the network piece, which is probably typically very expensive, and that's utility based on your usage, almost like a cell phone, right? But most people don't understand that you don't have hey, I've got a solid wire connection going from my place to that place where that other computer system may be. It could be routed all over the world for what people don't understand. And
I agree with you, Al. I think the biggest difference in cloud computing, and I think it's a reason why services have to exist. First of all, how many certifications get in AWS? I mean, how complicated is AWS? If you were to get all those services, are you going to be a full-time student by the time you get all the certificates?
You'd be pretty close.
Yeah.
It took me over 3 years, and this was being, in a professional services world, being exposed to these services every single day, hearing different use cases. And to your point, I think, Chris, there's so many things to learn, but you can't possibly keep up with it. Therefore, you don't know where you can really always improve your specific areas of like data. Look at the number of databases that Amazon offers at any given moment. I was at reInvent 2 years ago, and we were launching a brand new service using DynamoDB. We walked downstairs and they released time series database, which was exactly what we were trying to do with DynamoDB. Like, we've been live for 4 hours and it's already depreciated. Like it's already deprecated service. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There's 5 major certifications, and now there are another 4 practice areas to get your certifications in. It's just impossible to stay up on top of. If one person's saying they know it all, they only know the logos. That's it.
And how dominant is the security testing in those? Is it always a big thing, or is it always just a small little component? I've never taken them.
Security, I can speak a little more to the networking side. We haven't had too many people dive into the security specific competencies, but I'll just say one of the best CCIEs I've known has struggled a couple of times. It took him a couple of whacks at that test.
So it's just not somebody else's computer then, huh?
No, it's somebody else's lexicon. It's it's not only lexicon, but with lexicon language as well. It's that it's more than a Rosetta Stone. It's you also then have to have the nuances of what language was like in that environment. So you can get the technology. Sorry, 4 kids at home.
It's okay. So we're used to the dogs too. Don't worry about it.
You got those California dogs going.
So
I know.
You've got you've got the nuance of language to pick up on as well. So and I think Micah really experiences that. I'm sure Steve sees it as well when we're starting to digest all these logs coming into our environments. It's like, well, this thing kind of looks like it's saying there's an area issue here, but maybe it's not. We've seen and understand the complexity of the routing. Quite often, customers end up with authentication attempts that look like they're coming from countries that they should not have, but it's the DNS reflection. It's completely. If you find the path, you can correlate it. But how do you ask those questions? And with the black box that is cloud, there's a lot of documentation, but I can't tell you the number of times a day I say whatever alien technology Amazon deployed to get transit gateway to work, or a database replication, or this security pattern. It's just impossible for anybody to know all that stuff.
I think, Chris, one thing I want to point out too is that when you talk about it's not somebody else's computer, or in Micah's words, it's someone else's very complex computer. It's also someone else's 100,000 data centers. It's also someone's. As a small company or a large company, large companies spend a lot of time on disaster recovery. They spend a lot of time on, continuity plans if something happens. The cloud shift is really about the fact that now, as a small or large company, you're not relying on that hard drive to stay up all the time. You don't have that RAID 5, that you're hoping that 2 drives will go at the same time.
Yeah, so, Micah will tell you though, you got the EBS issue versus the S3. Like everybody loves EBS, but that's 4 nines of durability or 2 nines of durability or whatever. It's the low durability number. S3's got 11, right? So if you want something that's good, put in the S3, but then you can't pull it out as quick.
Yeah,
right.
Possible. Language translation lexicon side. Yeah, you're still talking about data availability, data durability, but you usually would speak to it in that case of RAID. And now it's like, well, now I'm actually looking at play.
Yeah.
And to really throw a kink in it, look at EFS. There's a whole nother storage tier that is, that has all of its complexities with it that people are starting to use heavily too. So,
and I think what you get, especially when you start going on, when Amazon first came out, you came out with things like EC2, EBS, RDS, these base services that they are just replicating standard infrastructure and they put it into a cloud environment. When you're a new company or you're starting up a new application, you would almost never recommend any of those traditional infrastructure services in AWS to do almost anything. Those are a lot of it for like being able to legacy move stuff. But if you're building pure cloud applications or pure stuff from the ground up, you will probably may never see those kind of base level infrastructure services, because why would you use them? Like you can use all the advantages that you get from their 100,000 data centers and their tens of thousands of architects that are building data lakes and building redundant data systems for you.
They say it all the time. Once you get on one of the clouds, it's really hard to port to another. Now, Jeremy, did you bring up Wasabi one time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wasabi.
So that's another complication is that Wasabi sits on the outside, but it's cheaper to have the same speed, right? So it adds another engineering parameter to it. Now, so Steve, you're running the MSSP part of it, right?
Yeah.
So how does that MSSP change when you're dealing with AWS? Because traditionally, like Jeremy knows this because he's running a very distributed type of network, but how does the client really understand the implications, whatever that word is, of AWS mobile devices like Sandblast? We're gonna get that one eventually. Sandblast. And then you got you got SD. You guys brought up SD-WAN. You brought up Cisco. So you're talking Meraki, but there's PepLink out there, right? And the Fortinets are kind of being used like SD-WAN nowadays by people.
Silver Peak.
Yeah. So Steve, you're dealing with this. Is it a hard topic to have with somebody, or do they care? I mean, do people really understand that their infrastructure's changed, especially with COVID? Think about it. I mean, your networks are now, boom, spread out. We used to have like a single point on our graphic saying this is where your users are, and now they're all spread out across the state, right? And for our case, across the country, and you guys too across the country. So what's it like now?
I think that you see a couple things when you're dealing with. Well, first of all, I think one thing that happened with COVID is a lot of people with traditional systems realize the power of the cloud. So if you're sitting there with, let's say you got to send everybody home and you have a VPN set up for 50 people and you need to send 5,000 home all of a sudden, or 500 people and you need to send 5,000 home. So the cloud became a place to say, well, wait, hold on. You're saying we can spin up virtual VPNs in the cloud and everyone can attach all of a sudden. And then a lot of the old traditional infrastructures, then your only bottleneck now is how many pipes are coming into your system. So that's something I think that, people are starting to realize the power of the cloud. I will say that, the other part that we run into, when we talk about security, everyone on the other end of this, whereas this is all new and fun and easy to spin up, a lot of people are dropping the traditional security that they still need to do. They still need to monitor their systems. They still need to make sure that they're locked down. It's fairly common to see every user within the cloud environment be an admin, or root accounts with public and private keys. I mean, it's an amazing kind of way to say, yeah, it's all new, but you still have to take the traditional security over with it. So I think that people understand that the cloud is fast, fun, and we have unlimited resources. They don't realize, hey, we got to lock it down. We still need to watch our stuff. Amazon's only guaranteeing this part of the security versus this part. So a lot of what I do is a lot of coming in and talking to people about how to lock down their systems and how to use products like CloudCheckr and do kind of ongoing auditing and make sure that those systems are updated. We have a lot of, with today's day and age of MFA, you'd think if you go to the cloud, everyone's going to be on multi-factor at this point. They're not. I mean, I really believe that people think, oh, the Amazon's got this. I'll just join Amazon. They're the government uses them. That's great. They do. And they do have their part of it locked down.
Microsoft.
What's that?
Microsoft,
or they use Azure.
The Jedi contract or something.
Yep.
That everybody wants to chisel on the billion there.
Yeah. So
Jeremy, are you using what two-factor are you like on the cloud? Are you a Duo guy or are you a Office 365 Azure? What's your multi-factor?
I'm an Okta guy.
Both.
Okay, you like Okta? Yeah.
I have a
Duo guys here at PTP.
I have a folder on my phone that's just labeled 2FAs, just for all the 2FA tools I have installed.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's but you know what? I'd rather have that than have the number of customers that I do initial logins for and don't see any 2FA installed. It's kind of it's pretty
scary.
In fact, I had a friend message me this morning saying, "Hey, how do I catch somebody that broke into my child's webcam?" Like, well, your child's webcam doesn't have 2FA, then you shouldn't be installing it in your house. If you don't have a camera here, and then you're gonna leave all your intellectual property out in your internet, out in the public internet. It's crazy.
I mean, Amazon.
I don't think people outside this security industry even know what 2FA is. I mean, I have conversations with banks all the time, and none of them. They're all just make your password longer.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah. That was proven to be a misnomer, right? I mean, I think that
Rainbow tables do that.
Well, it works if they're only using a dictionary attack, but since really it's just social engineering is how they're going to get your password, it doesn't really matter how long you make it or how complicated.
Exactly.
Give it to
Yeah,
somebody.
we can have a session on
Right.
how to defeat 2FA.
So-
You know, that unfortunately a lot of people don't know how 2FA works, and they're being scammed, right? People call them up saying, hey, this is the bank, and I'm going to give you a message. Can you read back the number for me, please? And they do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
and they were doing this back in AOL days 30 years ago with the RSA tokens.
Now I'm a little upset. I use 2FA on my phone and it's face recognition, but my son cracked that in like 3 seconds when I said, you can't open my phone without my face, and he just went, "Burp." Got it. So
You guys have brought up a couple of points about the cloud and the cloud costs, and you've brought up CloudCheckr. I'm a CloudCheckr partner, right, just like you guys, but I'm curious to know what made you settle on using CloudCheckr. Did you look at Turbonomics? Why not use AWS's native tools? You know, how, and then why would the average sysadmin or CIO want something like this in their environment?
So we ended up partnering. There's also Cloud Health, which is a Boston-based company. In my previous lives, I used Cloud Health. Quite honestly, what really attracted us as to be a CloudCheckr partner is a lot of these companies started because they were billing providers. They were helping you break out and identify a tag and associate to chargeback or showback, or my new favorite one, shameback, reporting into the business units. So they all started really in that area, and you can even see Netflix Ice. I don't know if you remember that open source project was a similar thing. And they all kind of created their services from that. CloudCheckr started from the security perspective. They said, no, we want to go in there and find out what are the best practices. Are we actually adhering to what are industry best practices through certification or audit from an audit perspective, or in Amazon's perspective. This was happening way before a War document or anything like that existed. So that's where CloudCheckr started, and then they took on the billing perspective. So they had just a breadth of knowledge of security best practices and infrastructure best practices before they worried about billing. So I see a lot of people partnering up with CloudCheckr saying, hey, look, it's a great billing platform. Yeah, it's a great billing platform, but it's an excellent security platform to get people aware of baseline configuration. If you want to give an auditor a dashboard that says, hey, I'm HIPAA compliant, we can give that auditor a login and they can see real time how all of your accounts, not just a single account, how all of your accounts are stacking up against their requirements.
And you know what? I just got to add, every time I hear this product's a great security platform and things like that, it's just one piece of the cake mix, right? You got to have an entire end-to-end thought process or alignment around security.
I totally agree with you. So what I like to tell the folks when they're coming onto our CloudCheckr platform is, we're going to tell you this is a best practices check. We aren't checking packets. We aren't checking application deployments. We aren't validating that your IAM roles are actually being given the right policies. What we're doing is a best practice validation against your environment. So you can pass those audits and say, look, yeah, we need to dig deeper. And as Al points out, you got to dig deeper. But from an audit perspective, it can really help you get a good jump start. And then from the billing perspective, it'll make sure that you don't go out and blow $16,000 in
right.
6 hours like a customer of mine did because somebody apparently fell asleep on the enter key and restarted their job 16 times in a row. So, it'll help catch those types of things. So in comparison to the AWS tools, you've got Cost Explorer and you've got Trusted Advisor. So Trusted Advisor, great tool. It gives 60 or something checks out of the gate. And then you can go in and configure all those tools. And you can go configure Trusted Advisor to do everything that CloudCheckr does. But you're going to sink a lot of engineering time to go educate Trusted Advisor on how to do that, unless you've got somebody that's taken a whole bunch of IP from a previous employer and stuffs it into your AWS account for you. So Trusted Advisor can do it, but you have to train it to do.
Yeah, I think you're going down the right road, Aaron. I think for the most part, when you take a look at any of these providers, whether it's Google, AWS, or Amazon, or Google, Amazon, what's the other one? Microsoft, Azure.
Azure.
Yeah, they're really giving you the
Alibaba.
They're giving you minimal capability. I hate to say it, They think it's the world's greatest thing. It's literally the minimal capability. I mean, you look at Sentinel from Azure, and as a SIM, I mean, it's like the PowerPoint of SIMs. It's a very oversimplified capability. And you know what? It's great to pull data from, but it's not a tool that I would use every day.
There's
right?
definitely a security argument to be made that it's also good to have an outside tool checking Amazon and not Amazon checking Amazon.
Well, now you're getting to the point of intelligence versus data. And I think that the big guys love to give you data, but then they're asking you to have the intelligence to understand it, right? And if my job is health, listen, those guys are freaking geniuses when it comes down to breaking down the genome, but most of them don't understand two-factor authentication, never mind all the nuances of how to handle a cloud versus prem versus SD-WAN versus mobile. And so I guess I'm on my soapbox right now, but it kind of wraps up to this whole thing to me that, so here you are as PTP, right? And you brought up CloudCheckr, Jeremy's brought up CloudCheckr. You're dealing with a different environment today, and you're dealing with different technology. And you guys are all workers. I got to pull the sales guy in. How do you sell to somebody? I guess everybody's a salesperson, right? Mm-hmm. How do you sell the fact that their bread and butter, you have a facility, ArcSight, QRadar world is dead? How do you sell that to them?
So from just a raw security perspective, or the general cloud perspective?
If you're talking to a CISO,
yep.
And a CISO, like, how do you convince a CISO, listen, you just can't shoot your data over to your local SIM and think it was designed 20 years ago. I mean, how do you convince a CISO to take it seriously, well, nowadays, I guess they take SD-WAN and the home user seriously, but how do you convince them to take the cloud seriously?
So, Steve, I don't know if you have a stronger answer than me, but I'll give my quick response on this. As my phone now has a 20 billion gigapixel camera in it, and my screen resolution on that is so fine. So that's accuracy and resolution. Accuracy and resolution in your environment is always improving based on the technology that you're being provided. So if you were going to shift your environment, as Micah said, somebody else's significantly more complex computer, does your legacy tool that had high accuracy and resolution on a less complex environment going to retain those same capabilities as you go up? And and I know accuracy and resolution are always one of those things. It's like good, bad, good, best, fast kind of thing. Or it's the CISO needs to understand that the improvement of technology as modified because of that language change, because of the complexity, and those tools, while may give you a similar level of reporting, there's going to be that whole new layer of the cloud infrastructure that is that black box that you need to have some insight into, and that's really what these modern tools like CloudCheckr, like Trusted Advisor, AWS Inspector, Guard Duty, Control Tower, all those things are helping you provide.
So you basically have to convince the CISO that the AWS perimeter is as important as their facility, right? Yeah. Which is really tough. I mean, you think about the SIMs that they use today and the data they use today, and the MSSPs they use today, that they're so used to dealing with, a facility, and they talk about fixing their desktops and changing their firewall rules. and I think it's mind blowing.
I think that, I have a different perspective. I don't know if it's a better answer than Aaron's, but what I would say is, Mike and I came from a large retailer, which is in the news these days as a frontline worker, but we came from a large retailer, and I would say it is as traditional as a place that you could find. I mean, it literally is brick and mortar, brick and mortar, brick and mortar. I don't think you have to sell it anymore. Right. I think everybody's already sold on the cloud. I think it's just a matter of helping them get there. I think the bigger problem these days, you're either a new startup that starts in the cloud, and that's just where you start these days, or you're an older large company, or an older medium-sized company, or a small company that doesn't know how to get to the cloud. So I think the bigger question is, they come and say, how do you help us move to the cloud? And then how do we secure that? once we get in there. So I think, I think we're past the days, and I lived through it. We were at the lodge. I was one of them. We're not going to the crowd. That's someone else's computer that has access to my stuff. And I think that mentality's gone now. I think that you're more about the fact that how do I move legacy equipment? How do I make sure it's safe once it's there?
Yeah, I think that there's something to really be said about that, Steve, because as you mentioned early on, all of a sudden you've got to now take this work from home effort and move everybody there, but you don't have the scalability or capacity with the local equipment, right? So in some cases you're being forced. But I want to follow up on a question. We talked a little bit about the perimeter security for AWS. And yet I constantly hear, and I've even seen predictions that yet even more are going to be found and exposed, but you always hear about these huge databases that are unprotected, right? That people somehow find a door into on these cloud environments, and AWS is no exception, right? So we talk about this AWS perimeter security. Doesn't this have to tie into vulnerability assessments in a large degree here, that you just can't say, here's your AWS environment, man, we've got you perimetered here, but don't you have to follow up and have that vulnerability capability that goes in and assures that you're not exposed?
Because Micah has developed this great vulnerability platform for us, I'm going to let him answer that question, but you're absolutely correct, but I'll let Micah answer.
Micah, you working this crap?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think vulnerability is always going to be that real key part, because it lets you see things and attacks that may happen before they happen. Amazon's never going to be responsible for your actual server or your database's security. That's just not the realm they're going to get into. They're going to give you that process, and either you turn it over and you do that vulnerability scanning to make sure you're patching, to make sure you're doing all those traditional security best practices and rules, and you just lock all that down, or you're just going to get breached. I think there's another part of that also, though, in AWS that is very different from the traditional world of doing those kinds of things, where they find these large databases or they find these things on the internet, is everything in AWS basically connects to their API, to their, in some form or fashion. You don't have to actually have a physical IP connection to get to almost any service of theirs if you have keys to the kingdom. And this is, I think, where a large amount of people like really fall down and go into the cloud.
Yeah, I don't think people will understand. Like, we should find somebody at Postman to have an interview with who knows security, right? Because a lot of people really don't know API security. Never mind Amazon security, right? In AWS, the world is really RESTful interfaces and tokens. And Jeremy, save me, bro. You're shaking your head, by the way, when he was talking about vulnerabilities. What's going through your head, man?
Through me? My head?
No, Jeremy.
Oh, Jeremy. I was okay.
Jeremy, I know Steve's been drinking too much.
Oh, maybe he's falling asleep.
Maybe a little both.
So you're talking about the vulnerabilities, that you're shaking your heads too. I mean, what are you dealing with vulnerabilities nowadays? Like, when people are going
it's when we do scans and we realize, or we're doing pen testing for customers and they say, here's our AWS IP address. It's like shooting fish in a barrel sometimes. They just don't really appreciate how to properly secure their environment. They don't really read the EULA that says, we're responsible for this, you're responsible for this. And I think that is the biggest failure in the cloud adoption, cloud migration strategy that CIOs, CISOs have, right? Yeah. They rely on too much of the cloud service provider for their security and think that they have no responsibility from that point on, which is completely the opposite. They're very little about what, I think someone said this earlier, very little about what Amazon is protecting. It's a very small amount to what you're responsible for. API keys, social engineering, people have, I've seen publicly open GitHub's accounts where people leave their keys in there. And there you go. I got the soapbox.
I got the soapbox. I'm ready to go with you, buddy.
That's a fair way to
I go in there, I steal their keys,
Okay.
All right,
and I
Aaron.
walk in and I take anything I want.
Hold on, I'm gonna grab my soapbox that one of my employees at a video delivery company I worked for got to me when we started to talk about Amazon. He's like, "Oh my God, I'm buying you a soapbox," and he did. And I've kept it for the last 10 years. The concept of who owns, what is the true customer responsibility? It is a shared responsibility model, and Amazon, thankfully, is kind enough to go a little over that edge. I've been at customers before where they get notifications that Amazon has found somebody's security keys out in Git. And those things, it's great that they do those things. However, the line in the sand that everybody needs to understand is once you boot that service and once you log into that console and you make a conscious decision, be it knowingly or unknowingly, if there's a conscious button click, that is now your choice. You are choosing to open that environment up. You are choosing to put that public key out there. I don't leave my front door key under my mat with my credit cards next to it because that's just stupid. But the credit card company's like, well, if somebody wants to go break into your house and steal your credit card and run it up, why were you so dumb to leave it on your front doorstep overnight? There absolutely has to be some ownership on the customer side of things. And when Micah talks about the complex computer that is out there, the complexity becomes an understanding of where that ownership line is. And we try to work really hard with our customers to help them clearly define that line. And also from managed services practice where we draw the line and our application or infrastructure ownership. But when you click submit on that EC2 instance launch, and you rack up what is it, the X series, the bare metal hardware that can cost $265,000 a year if you let it run 24 hours a day on demand. If you made that decision to run a domain controller, that is your decision. And then if you decide to put those keys out in your GitHub, that is your decision. So absolutely, that shared responsibility model is so tough for people to understand. And thankfully, Amazon professional services teams have put together more documents, the well-architected review documents that really help define those responsibilities.
Jeremy,
Is this another case for CloudCheckr? Right? Is this a case for that convince the CIO to spend a little money to save a bunch of money, either from breach remediation or misconfiguration?
Basically, we have right now is a brand new problem that's the exact same as a very old infrastructure problem. By default, Amazon wants to block you from doing everything. The solution that most customers come up with is, well, just let me do everything. It is the same problem of, well, the firewall wants to stop you from going everywhere. Well, just allow all the traffic. Well, then why do you have the firewall?
Going back to that, yes, CloudCheckr. If you run this, just as I was saying, like almost like a vulnerability service, where you're doing the audit checks and you're making a conscious effort to fix those things. CloudCheckr is going to expose things like keys being sent to a root account, and it's going to expose like you have 96 admins right now. It's going to expose that your ACLs are wide open to the internet, and there's 52 RDS instances that could go out right now, and they're wide open. It's going to expose all that. And what I see when you talk about vulnerability scanning, those are the keys. Traditional vulnerability scanning in the AWS environment, still necessary, and using CloudCheckr and making it kind of a patch management / vulnerability like service. And that's going in and saying, okay, I'm going to put some effort behind fixing these things. I mean, I think it needs to be noted that for those of you not in the security world, we see a lot of movies where there's, some super smart guy trying to figure out how to get in your system. The reality is you're not patching these holes, and they're just buying it as a service on the internet and running known attacks on your systems and getting in that way. It's easier than coming up with some kind of, I got a new way to get in there. We all see that as well. We all see when algorithms get get figured out. And we all see that hackers come up with new ways to get into systems. But I mean, what would you think, Chris? 90% is just open holes that are there.
I mean, that's why Anonymous existed. Yeah,
Too true.
But my point is that patch those holes and you'll be fine. You'll be a lot better off than you think.
So you almost sound like, I'll leave it at this because it's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, you almost sound like the industry's ready for a new scanner out there. Almost like a new vulnerability scanner. I mean, it sounds like CloudCheckr will give you some good data. But Micah, are you busy enough on the weekends to write a brand new scanner? I mean, it sounds like there's a new scanner out there where you can run an agent, scan, and say, these are the vulnerabilities that I'm seeing you not being able to use. And then passively analyze your data. I think there's not enough passive analysis out there.
Yeah, there's definitely a two-part of that it probably doesn't exist quite yet in one tool. The ability to check all that from best practices, to check all that, plus the ability to check for your traditional pen test, vulnerability, patch management, all those things. But even in CloudCheckr, I mean, there's a level beyond that has to
way beyond. I mean, CloudCheckr is there to really save you money and to say, hey, you left these 6 machines running overnight.
Well,
like we had Quinn ran 200 extra machines one night. He's like, oh, thank God for CloudCheckr.
CloudCheckr will tell you have 89 admins in your company. It won't necessarily tell you that you also have 500 people that have keys to your billing environment in addition to your server environment.
Right. And there's no behavioral analysis either, right? So it's not saying, hey, these admins have changed the city state by which they're logging in from, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's a lot of weakness in both CloudCheckr and the audit capability in AWS itself. Let's just say that like I said, they gave you the rudimentary capability and said, hey, I'm giving you the result. You analyze the data. Right.
I mean, unless you build a customer and a new client or a company from the ground up in a cloud environment, very, very cautiously and restrictively, it's very hard to stop some of this without regularly checking these kinds of things and regularly auditing through them. Yeah, I mean, technically, you could start a customer from the ground up and give people only ability to run set CloudFormation templates that deploy set things in the set subnets, and no one has access to do anything except the extremely restrictive set that they need to do this stuff. That never happens, ever.
No.
Unless you call PTP first.
Yeah.
So
Call PTP first.
let me ask a follow-up question here then. Vulnerability checking also identifies gaps in your patch levels, right? For products. OTA in the open, I forget what OTA stands for, but it's an open foundation, right? But they did a study with the FBI of all breaches for 2018. Mm-hmm. And what they found was that 95% of all breaches were preventable. 95% of all breaches, right? We all remember.
Like every airplane crash is human error. I mean,
we know, for example, the Apache struts, right, with the big credit firm, was left updated.
But here we go. We got 3 guys here from healthcare, right?
So, but here's the question: in the cloud environment, do the customers have the expectation that if this service is being provided in the cloud in this complex computer environment, that not only the hardware all the way down to the Intel chip that they're running on the box, right, all the way through the application OS, is all of that being updated so that it will stay current with all the latest security? Or is that the responsibility of the end user client who uses these AWS type services?
Well, you're going to get me in an argument right there. So you guys want to answer before I start getting on my soapbox?
I'd like to hear, Steve.
Here's the issue. PTP. You guys are dealing with healthcare, right?
Yeah.
If they build a dialysis machine, they build a testing machine, and it's built on a old version of Java, you're not going to call them up and say, fix it.
You mean
right?
if you're Amazon or if you're...
It's funny how specific you actually were to one of our customers. And that's why I brought the soapbox out to talk about shared responsibility model here. This goes back to the education on that and the delineation between PTP and our customers. We can go out there and say, yes, Micah went off and he's made it so you can only run CloudFormation templates and you can only do these things, and there's no I'm actually going to call Steve least privilege access. I hear him. That's his favorite phrase.
Least privilege. Do it.
Privilege. Yeah. So we've done all of that. However, there's still software that somebody's writing that needs to be maintained, and it's your responsibility to either educate us as your managed service provider of how we are going to interact with those services. And quite honestly, it would be a rare thing for us to sign, because for us to learn the nuances of everybody's applications, then why are they there kind of thing. So they need to make sure that they have the appropriate tools in there, keeping track, watching the CVEs, keeping an eye out there for the applications that they're running. And that is their responsibility. But with the cloud, you now have the ability to say, I can actually focus on those CVEs. I can go upgrade Apache Strut, because I'm not having somebody wake up. That video delivery company, one morning, this guy Ryan walked into the office. I handed him a backpack and a plane ticket backpack full of 92 drives and a plane ticket, and said, "You're going to Chicago." And I lost him for 3 days. An engineer gone for 3 days because he had to go replace hard drives, because he had to worry about, engineers getting lost for cross connects, or whatever these manual tasks that are taking your time away from your core business. So if you know your core business and what your core business is trying to deliver, the applications and services that they require, we're trying to make it so that you're focused on everything, everything above N13.
I love that. That's a great, if you sum this whole thing up, I think it's a great point that people don't understand is that these organizations have business that's very important to get done, and you can't tell them to change their infrastructure. The only thing you do is put a sleeve around it and secure it as best you can, right? And as technology advances, unfortunately, a lot of this old technology, this legacy, even 2 years is legacy in our industry, is right. I can't tell you how many GitHub messages I got for a repository I wrote 3 years ago. It says, you just got another vulnerability. I'm like, I'm not updating that damn thing. I don't run it anymore.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I digress because I'm near the end of my second beer. It really is called faceplant for a reason.
But, Chris, I will say that, the initial question was, what would we do as PTP if Java was down level? Well, we'd come up with a solution, whether we're going to wrap some security around it, whether we're going to help you upgrade it. We just recently did that with a customer that had old CNC machines that had, and maybe you could help me out, Micah, had some vulnerabilities on there just because of the Windows level I think they were running. And we notified them, and they worked on getting it fixed. But those were machines, and that was due to Fluency telling us that, hey, there's some problems out here. So I think that, from a company perspective, what I'll tell you is we can't tell them to replace their things, but we can tell them, hey, you're going to be a lot safer if you do X, Y, Z. And here's how we would do it.
Yeah. To tell you the truth, you guys exist because of this reason. Al, that's the reason why I kind of started getting a little emotional. It's because, PTP exists because it was so easy just to extend what you're doing in the lab into the AWS cloud. There'd be no need for Jeremy or PTP.
That's right.
Right?
We talked about it earlier with all the certs that were in AWS. Technology continues to get more and more complex and more varied. It is harder and harder for you to hire 2 or 3 engineers and expect them to be able to do everything and know everything and keep track of everything. More and more, you've got to have specialized people into specialized areas.
You're like the farmers of security, right? I've seen that. There's a squirrel that jumped onto my heart rate system, EKG, and sort of messing. I've seen it. I can tell you how to handle it, right? It's basically the reason why you handle, or why you pass on the baton to an MSSP, is because their breadth of vision on that product base and that capability is going to be larger than internally, and it's going to allow you to do your business, right? Like I said, I'm done with I'm sadly done.
So Jeremy, if you could add a little bit more color on that, because I'm beginning to believe that this whole concept of managed MSSP environments says that, yeah, we're going to watch for security events, but vulnerability probably is going to play about a 50+% role of the environment, of the relationship we do with you. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Jeremy, step in. 90% is stupidity. 10% is vulnerability.
I think if you're working with an MSSP that doesn't offer vulnerability assessment or vulnerability management as part of their package, you're making a mistake. That's really the key, because just watching logs isn't providing a security service.
Got it.
Yeah, that's how I tell you that you've already been breached. It's less how I tell you to prevent being breached.
So, yeah.
Have you been pwned today?
Yes.
So I'm going to change the topic just for a second, because I know Chris has already fallen flat in his face with the second beer.
Yeah, I'm about to go with my third, and that's not going to be
Hurry
good.
it up, Al. I'm through this double, so it's going to be interesting.
I'd like to get a response both from you, Steve, and Micah, and then a response from Jeremy to this question. In this, as we talked about this whole COVID experience where people have got to transition to work from home, what are some of the guidance areas that you can give companies as their employees are making this transition, again, from your experience of what you're seeing through logs and other user behavior activity, right? What kind of guidance can you give to companies today who are still looking at moving their people out to a work from home environment?
Well, a couple of things. First, I would say make sure that it's a little bit more like the roof is leaking, let's go fix it now. But if you haven't been doing user education, you should have been. So we use a product called KnowBe4 to help our customers. But
Kevin, please take my invite to do a meeting. Thank you. Go on.
Right, exactly. I think the stats are, I'm pulling them out this time, but I don't have them in front of me. 800,000+ hosts have come online with either COVID virus or Corona, not the good kind of Corona. 150,000, I think Risk IQ reported 150,000 spam emails per day are coming out with these kind of malware kind of temptation attacks. You combine that with the legit businesses. I don't know how you guys have handled the legit businesses. I mean, Kohl's is ready to save me in the coronavirus pandemic at this point. They have the perfect shirt.
They have shirts on sale.
So and PayPal, and I know it's not PayPal, but I know PayPal keeps telling me that due to the Corona incident, someone has accessed my account. Please click on this link to log in. So I think one of the biggest things right now is I hope that you've trained your users. If you haven't, make sure you're in contact with your users, telling them what's going on from a malware perspective and the amount of phishing that's going on right now.
Jeremy, did you read that article that the business of selling phishing kits is up 25%?
Oh yeah. And from some of the work that we do in the CTI League, we see that attack vector being as the primary exploit, right? We're constantly identifying new domains coming online that have something to do with coronavirus or COVID-19 or
I keep on getting voicemail attacks. I don't know about you, Al. I got like 5 or 6 a day. I got a voicemail. Anyways, go on.
I keep getting text messages from the politicians. I never gave them my information for that.
Yeah,
Make that go away.
The politicians have all your information. Don't worry.
God, I wish I could they all can go away. Both sides gone. I'm joining my libertarian, who's my next door neighbor. I'm done.
Jeremy, we've heard in terms of some of his insights or guidance, the training, which I happen to believe is very important, because all too often what I see is that a lot of the behaviors that an employee would do at home in their privacy of their home which they're entitled to do, they're bringing them over and starting to do that on corporate assets and corporate networks and corporate time, right? Be it watching Netflix during business hours, to go into online gaming sites, to all these other things, phishing sites,
Yeah.
sites, all that kind of stuff. So what guidance do you have, Jeremy?
Well, if you haven't done it, probably if you have the ability to do layer 7 traffic management, right, or web filtering with your firewalls, turn off porn, turn off Netflix, any kind of stuff like that. Because now all that's going to do is going to suck up the bandwidth, because users people are working from home and they just want to go to Netflix and they don't care what machine they're on. But they don't realize the impact of running Netflix through your corporate network over the VPN, right?
Or the kids.
So if you
Jeremy,
block all that stuff, say again?
The kids. How many times we have a couple of
The
alerts
children.
that are not exactly
the
big
children.
alerts, and it's children using parents' machines.
I mean, I think
But even still, if that stuff is turned off, you're going to save a bunch of bandwidth. You're going to make the user experience, the business experience on the VPN better. The other thing I would say, if you have the budget availability, consider VDI. Whether that's through Citrix or that's through VMware, or you want to do something in the cloud, consider VDI as an alternate rather than having to invest the money in delivering hardware.
And we can help you
and
set up
securing
AWS
that hardware.
What do you say, Micah?
We can help you set up
AWS workspace.
That's the thing we can do. I can connect it to your Office 365 environment.
And free to organizations under 50 users until July 1st.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I also believe in the Cisco product umbrella as far as like kind of a safety net to.
We like Umbrella. We think Umbrella is solid too. I think the problem with Umbrella is cost. Really, it's just the priciest.
Yeah.
For what it does, it's open DNS.
If you're going to send all that number of people home, I think you either the VDI kind of solutions are great. And if not, if you have the budget to invest in things like Carbon Black or some of those endpoint protection,
Yeah, we like the big three around here.
They will save you from a lot of things. But I would say back to Al's original, like if the biggest things I would talk about sending people home would be like Steve talked about, user education. Make sure you've got two-factor like enabled through your company, because if you can't protect the device that they're potentially working from and the network they're working across, have the two-factor running and go with your least privilege models. You lock down users' ability to make changes to only the things that they need that are in the scope of their job. You just stop the surface of attack.
Yeah, I think we're
Reduce
wrapping
it
up
as
now.
much as you can.
Steve, he brought up your name, least privilege. You have any last words?
Well, my name's least privilege. I was going to have a drinking game that every time Micah said Lambda that I would drink, but literally no one has said Lambda the entire time. So we'll let that go, but remember that next time. I think that, just that we've been talking about putting those security tools in place, making sure that your users are as protected as possible, watching that ingress into your environment, because to the points that have been made, that people are going to start watching Netflix. There's going to be a lot more remote user. If you have a traditional network and you're coming in, your firewalls are going to be more taxed, and VPN devices are more taxed than ever. So, and like I said, the wrap up is user education as well. But I think that's it.
Aaron?
Put a bow on it.
You got a soapbox here, bro.
That's the surface.
The soapbox is, when you're looking at the cloud, know your role, know where you sit, take the time to really focus on what it is that you need to do, be it from a finance perspective, a technology perspective, and the rest of it, trust in the cloud provider, sign up for those BAA agreements, get all the artifacts, get the certifications, and then stop worrying about the underpinnings that make all of that happen. Focus on your business, focus on your security, make sure the things that you're responsible for, you do well. Because We
What I'm hearing,
so much
Aaron,
time
so-
in the data centers and pulling cables and all that. It's gone now. Let's move
Yes,
into
what
it.
I'm hearing from you, and I know you're giving your last soapbox speech, but you're saying, listen, focus on your business and outsource what you don't know instead of trying to learn.
Yeah. Get rid of it.
I would even
Paper.
instead of hiring an entire department of people to do that for you, hire, outsource that, because the first step, to Micah's point earlier, if you really want to set it up right,
Yeah.
you're going to have to hire a department before you set it up right. So avoid that cost. Focus on what you do well. Get someone that's already done it and does it well and does it efficiently.
What are you thinking, Jeremy? I'm wrapping up.
That sounds like a. I
Sounds
mean,
like a plan.
it sounds like a plan. This is a great show. These guys know what they're doing.
It's
AWS
about
specialists.
fundamentals of blocking and tackling, just in anything, just fundamentals.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And one day we're gonna do a show with Al, and Al's gonna show us his Office 365 spreadsheet. And he's going to show you all the different event IDs and opcodes that possibly occurred.
And here I thought I could reminisce back of the day, and we talked about pulling cables, Aaron, right? Back in the day when I hired into IBM working on the 360 mainframes, right? And you had 250K cache machines that had power distribution cables that were this thick that would have to be run out to them. That would take 3 and 4 guys to run underneath the floor.
480 amps.
He's really old.
480 amp. And,
It's like a Simpson episode with Al. It's like, I remember the VAX DM. We used to thrash that sucker by making a cage.
Look, there's a success story here because he's done all that, and now he's the captain of the Starship Enterprise. For
He is.
So
That's right. Woo!
look how far he's come.
The future.
From cable jockey to captain.
We are
Right.
back to the future.
Space Force man over there.
Yeah. Well, it's been awesome, man. I appreciate it. Like I'm done with beer, and I need to get another one, but it's in a different room. So we just wrap it. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
You.
Yeah. We'll
Great
see how things
conversation.
go, and listen. I'll probably ask you back here every once in a while on a bunch of AWS stuff, because trust me, the new world is definitely moved to a different place, and nobody was ready for it, right? We always promised that nobody was ready.
Check
All right,
out.
Jeremy, no dogs. What happened to freaking dogs?
He came in.
Even
One.
once.
Get the gardener out there. We had this one episode
Oh, my
where we had to
goodness.
stop because the gardener came out and the dogs wanted to hump his leg. They were just barking the whole time.
Horrible.
Chris, I got one last thing for you. Since we started off before we started recording, talking about our instruments here, check out Deep Composer. It's AI generated music with Alexa.
AI generated music.
Yep.
I'm
Interesting.
trying to learn the intro to Spirit to Radio, the Rush song, and
Yeah.
it's going to take me a couple months before.
But a couple lines of code, it will happen for you.
This is what solitary confinement has done to me.
Absolutely.
Listen, I'm rooting for hockey teams that don't exist. Hey, Jeremy, I heard they might do a hockey playoff without like any other more games. You hear about that?
Yeah, just wherever you were in the standings, that's just where you are.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going
They're
to
going to play and they're going to play at empty stadiums, which will be weird. But I don't care, just as long as we get hockey back.
I agree with you 100%. And I would have gone for that baseball the same way. I'm sorry, concession people, but I'm ready to watch some sports. I'm tired of iRacing, and I can't watch NBA guys playing 2K or whatever. It just doesn't play some games. I don't care if it's dodgeball. I'll take the Ocho in dodgeball right now.
Take up running, man.
Did you run that one?
What's
Did
that?
you run the marathon there?
I've done 17 fulls, 50Ks, 50 milers. So I did this is the year that I did the dopey challenge. So Thursday you run 5K.
Yeah, you did the
Friday,
goofy.
10, half, and then full.
God, I want to do that one. Yeah, you're way above me. I've done
That's a hard
10.
pass.
I've done 10, and then I just had my second knee surgery.
I did
months
the
ago. So
Hey, hold on.
there you go.
ACL 6 weeks ago.
I did the dopey in when did I do that? 2017? 2017.
Which one you do?
I did the Dopey, 2017.
Mine 14. Yep.
Yep.
Sweet.
I mean, I'm going to speak for Al and Jeremy. If no one's chasing us, we're not running. I don't know. I'm just going there.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're gonna end on that one. We'll get the guitars out next time.
There we go.
Thanks, everybody. I gotta go.
Thank you so
Go.
Guys,
Take care.
Real pleasure.
thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.